Hello everybody, my name is Michael Wagner. I teach at the Westphal College of Media Arts and Design at Drexel University in Philadelphia. And on this channel I talk about digital media, game design and spatial audio. Now in this video today I would like to talk about my favorite new head tracker and why you actually might want to get one too. Now this is technically not really a new head tracker. This has been around for quite some time in the maker community. I never really took a look at it simply because my making abilities are questionable. My soldering skills are at the point where I pretty much destroy any component that I solder together. So I never really kind of took notice, but recently a French company reached out to me and they said that they added native support for these head trackers to their software. So I thought I'd give it another try. Now the company that reached out to me is Noisemakers, and in full disclosure, they provided me with their software for free. However, they did not make any kind of demands or anything. They didn't even ask me to create this video. So this is completely my opinion, and nothing essentially is sponsored in a traditional sense. Now the software that we're talking about is Ambi HD from Noisemakers. That is technically an Ambisonics decoder. It can take in signals up to third order Ambisonics, and as I said before, it has native head tracking support for these do-it-yourself head trackers, and that's what we're going to do today. Now I'm going to demonstrate this within Nuendo, but technically it works exactly the same way in any software, any digital audio workstation that can take in or that can work with third order Ambisonics signals. Now, before I go into any details, let me first briefly talk about why we actually need, or why we actually would like to use head tracking in audio production. And the main application area to use head tracking is for surround sound and immersive media production. So if you're doing any content that is in 3D, what you would generally like to do is you would like to be able to position sounds accurately in three-dimensional space. So for example, if you take a sound source and if you position that behind you, you would like to really be able to also experience that as if it would be behind you. Now, obviously, there are two ways to do that. The first one is the very obvious one, that you would create a 3D monitoring environment with speakers. So setting up a full speaker system. So for example, a 7.1.4 Dolby Atmos speaker system, or maybe an Ambisonics speaker system, and monitoring it that way. However, that is quite expensive and also a little bit involved because it requires you to really kind of think very critically about how you're going to do that in your studio space. Now, the other option is to use a head tracking device and use headphones in connection with that head tracking device, so that the head tracking device gives you an exact representation where exactly your head is in three-dimensional space, and then the computer can calculate the corresponding audio that is supposed to be fed into your headphones, so that you get an accurate representation of the sound as if you would be in an environment where you actually had a full surround sound speaker system. Now, there are a couple of head trackers out there, and if you watched my videos, you know that I like to use the Wavezen X head tracker. The reason I like to use it is simply because it was one of the few, or actually the only, really commercially easily accessible, let's call it that way, solution to do that. However, there are a number of disadvantages here. It's only up to first order Ambisonics, which is fairly restrictive. It was good enough for most of the things that we did, but it's not really kind of the perfect way to do that. And I also, if you saw my videos, I had quite some issues with the Bluetooth connection here. I'm not quite sure why. That might not be the case in your particular case. So, but in my case, it was actually an annoyance. So I'm actually quite happy to have this new device now, and this is, as I said before, it's not technically not really a new device. It's based on a maker project, really. And what it uses is an Arduino-based board. So it has a little kind of kind of processing board in there, and that, oops, so here we are, that processing board in there, and in addition to that processing board, you have this little sensor, which is a gyroscope and magnetometer, and it essentially can detect different kind of motions and movements that you can then use in order to calculate the the position of your head. Now, what you would do is you would solder those two things together, and in a certain way, and then essentially put that onto your headphones, connect it to your computer via USB cable, and put it on your headphones. Now, if you want to do that yourself, I'm going to put the link to the description on how to do that exactly in the description below, so that you can check that out. It's not that difficult to do. Once again, I decided not to go that route simply because I, in the past, have destroyed pretty much any circuit that I put a soldering iron on. Now, if you want to use that tracker, one of the things that you might want to do is you might want to put it into a certain casing, into a housing like this one. And this has been created or has been developed by a French maker, Rémi Janot. I hope I pronounce your name correctly. And it is a 3D printed device, a 3D printed housing. And you can either download the exact, files in order to print it yourself. I'm going to once again put a link to that in the description below. Or you can also, and that's what I did, contact Rémi and ask him to print it for you and send it to you. And in my particular case, what I did is I actually asked him to create the full tracker. So thanks, Rémi. This is your work. So he not only printed that, he actually also kind of put all the pieces together and sent me the completed piece. Was not that expensive. So if you're not really into making like I, maybe ask Rémi and maybe he does that for you too. Obviously, essentially for a fee, but was actually kind of very, very nice working with him, and I really enjoyed that. Now, once you have that, the integration into a digital audio workstation is fairly straightforward. And that's what I'm going to talk about now. I'm going to use Nuendo, but technically any digital audio workstation that can handle third order Ambisonics is fine. So it can be Cubase or Reaper, kind of many people here are Reaper people. And essentially it works exactly the same. And the software, once again, that we're going to use is Ambi HD from Noisemakers, which once again has been provided to me for free by Noisemakers. So check them out. I think they have some very nice software there. So let's get started. Now, I opened up a little project here in Nuendo. It consists of 3 different loops that I put together. I got a little bit tired of the same loop that I'm constantly using, so I did something new. And that essentially has a drum part, a synth part, and a bass part. And what we're going to do is we're going to position them in 3-dimensional space and then going to see how the tracking device works. So let me just play that briefly. So essentially we have a drum part here, right? We have a synth part here and a bass. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that into an Ambisonics project, and so I'm going to do it in the simplest way possible, quite frankly. Now, if you want to use the same technique in a Dolby Atmos project, you can follow the same procedures that we did with Waves NX tracker. So it's pretty much exactly the same. If you want me to do a special video about that, let me know and I can do that. But it's actually fairly straightforward. So I'm going to put in an Ambisonics track. I'm also not going to really work with the control room. So I'm just going to use a standard setup without the control room features. So once again, if you want to move that into control room, you can do that as well. Also something that I'm not going to talk about today, but if you want me to show you how to do that, I can certainly do that. So I'm just going to use the simplest way possible. So, and that means that I'm just going to add an Ambisonics track. So let's add an Ambisonics track here. I'm going to add a third order Ambisonics track. I'm going to route it to the stereo out, and let's call that Ambisonics bus, and add the track, and then let's move let's route the 3 loops, the 3 tracks into that Ambisonics bus. So let me just route that quickly. So that one, and as soon as we route those, we get the panning devices, the panners here in 3D, and the third one. And what I now have is I have the 3 tracks. They are routed into the Ambisonics bus, and the Ambisonics bus then is using the internal Ambisonics decoder to bring that back into stereo. So if I play that now, it should actually play fine without head tracking, obviously, it should use the Ambisonics decoder that is built in Nuendo. So let me just see if everything works. Now, if you worked with Ambisonics, you know that at that point the audio levels go down a bit. That has to do with the way the decoder works. So let me just kind of turn the volume on my audio interface up a bit. So far, so good. Now, in the next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to position the 3 sounds in 3 different locations, and let me just do that briefly. So let's just have the drums right in front of me. So all I'm really going to do is I'm going to move that to the front here somewhere, and then maybe the synth to my left, maybe a little bit to the back, maybe something like here. And then let's do the bass on the other side. And let's put that here. And let's see how that sounds. Now, obviously, currently we don't really have any head tracking enabled. So currently I should hear the bass pretty much on the right side and the synth on the left side, and my drums in front of me, so essentially mono in the center. So once again, this is just for demonstration purposes. So with that being done, let's first change the decoder from the built-in decoder to the Noisemakers decoder, because that's the one we're going to use. That's the one that has the native support of our new head tracker. So I'm going to, and the easiest way to do that would be if we could put that simply, if we could simply exchange the panning device. So in Nuendo, if you right click here, I have all kinds of options in terms of what panning device I'm going to use. Now, unfortunately, the Ambi Head HD does not show up here as a panning device, so I can't really use it that way. So I need to use it as an insert, which isn't a big deal, but you know, kind of it's something you have to note. So we're going to put that in as an insert, and we're going to add the Ambi Head HD, and that will then pop up. And there's one more thing I need to do. I need to disable the native built-in decoder, because currently I'm really decoding twice. So I'm using the Ambi Head HD to decode and then essentially decoding the same signal again. So I need to disable that. Now, unfortunately, and I don't quite know why, I never could disable the Ambisonics decoder in Nuendo. I first have to change that to something else. So to the mix, to the standard, essentially surround mix convert. And once I have that, I can actually disable it. So now the panning device in the Ambisonics bus is disabled, and I'm using the panning from the Ambi Head HD, currently still without head tracking. And that should now work. So let me go back. I think if I remember correctly, the gain is a bit different. So let me just turn the volume down a bit so that we are not overwhelmed. Let's see. And it's okay. But this is a binaural down mix, and as you can already hear, it sounds significantly better than the built-in the decoder from Nuendo. So that's already a big advantage. So that's nicely done. And but currently we don't really have any head tracking enabled. All we really have is this plugin, and we can obviously now move the head manually. So if I'm rotating my head here, I can obviously do that, and I can kind of have the pitch and everything. But what I want to do is I want to control these yaw, pitch, and roll parameters through my head tracking device. And that's what I'm going to do next. So first, let's prepare the head tracker, and let's put it on our headphone. What you generally do is you try to position that in the middle of your headset. So I'm going to put that up here, and I'm going to use simple rubber bands to affix that. So let me just kind of do that here. So that, yeah, it's about in the middle. So it's sitting here. Now the next thing is, and you might want to like that, or you might like that or not. I personally prefer it that way. It's not a Bluetooth device, so we actually need to connect it to the computer via USB cable. So it is a micro USB connection. So let me just take that. Where is it? Yeah, that's the right one. So let me just connect it here. Oops. And then what I'm also going to do is I'm simply going to fix or kind of make sure that the cable is connected securely. So I now have that cabled up, and then the last thing I need to do is I need to connect the USB-A into the computer. And I'm now cabled up. Now, as I said before, I personally think it's actually an advantage to have that cabled up, and the reason for that is because I always had issues with the Bluetooth connection of the Waves NX tracker. It never really worked correctly, and then there was always the issue that it would actually eat up batteries like crazy. So whenever I wanted to use it and I kind of started kind of putting everything together, then it essentially would not connect correctly, and the reason for that is because the battery was running low. So I'm actually quite happy. Let's put it that way. I'm not unhappy that I cabled up here. If you want, you can sort of kind of make that kind of put that together here, kind of clamp that together to make that a little bit more comfortable. So let's connect our head tracker to our little project here. And there's one more thing I need to do in order to be able to achieve that. And that is I need to open up the application that is responsible for the communication between the head tracker and the actual project in the digital audio workstation. And this is a little application that's called Head Tracker USC. It's an open source application. I'm going to put a link to the open source project in the description below. So we're going to simply open that. The OSC bridge essentially sees the head tracker as a serial device on a COM port. Now, you might have multiple COM ports active on your system. In my case, I have two, and unfortunately, it doesn't really tell you which one is the correct one. So you might want to kind of just try and out all the COM ports that you have until you find the one that is connected. In my particular case, it's on COM 4. So all I really need to do is I need to connect. As soon as I've connected, I see that it's getting the roll, pitch, and yaw information from my head tracking device. And I can push reset in order to reset the sweet spot. Now, be aware that with do-it-yourself trackers like this one, there is a little bit of drift. So especially if you are moving your head around quite a bit, it will drift away from the optimal position. So you will find yourself in the situation that you need to reset that once in a while. You can actually see how it drifts a bit here. And so just be aware that might actually happen. And the last thing that we need to do is we need to select the correct preset. The head tracker works with a number of different systems and produces head tracking information that can be fed into those systems. In our particular case, what we're using is Ambi Head HD. So we're going to select that preset. And that should be it. So let's move that out of the way. Once again, just leave that somewhere so that in case you need to reset the sweet spot, that you can simply get there. And with that being said, let's see if it works. Now, as soon as I've connected that, I see that the Ambi Head HD is already getting my head tracking information. So now my head is now tracked by the head tracker. So if I move to the left, I move to the right, if I move above, below, and so that seems to work fine. The plugin also has a couple of other nice features. Feel free to play around with it, but the one thing that I found particularly useful is the gain knob here, so we can actually increase the gain a bit. Because when you decode an Ambisonics signal, it tends to kind of reduce gain quite a bit, and so sort of we can actually kind of change that. What I did is I just increased the gain by 10 dB, which seems to work for my particular project here. And with that being said, let's see how that sounds. Now, as I said before, I have the drums in front of me. I have the bass on the right. I have the synth on the left, and what I'm hearing in my headphones is exactly what you're hearing on your headphones. So be aware that if I'm moving my head now, essentially you will hear that sort of as panning on your headphones. So if I'm moving to the right, I should actually kind of be able to hear or kind of look into the direction of the bass, which seems to be here. And if I'm moving to the left, essentially I see the synth here. So that all works very well. Now, one of the big advantages here obviously is that we have third order Ambisonics. So in contrast to the Waves NX tracker, this one tracks third order Ambisonics, and that gives you a much more accurate representation. Now, the disadvantage once again is that this head tracker sometimes drift a bit, so be aware of that. Okay. With that being said, what's my final thought about this thing? Now, I personally like it quite a bit actually, and the reason I like it is primarily because it is third order Ambisonics, so Waves can't do that. You get the advantage that you don't have to worry about Bluetooth connections. But the trade-off is slightly is a bit that it has a tendency to drift once in a while. So that's kind of a wash really. So kind of an advantage by a disadvantage. But the system works really well, really nicely, easy to set up. So if you are somebody who likes to produce surround sound or 3D sound or any form of Dolby Atmos content, this is certainly something to look at. Once again, I'm going to put all the links in the descriptions below. The final thing that I'd like to point out is that the Noisemaker software is really nice. One of the things though is that it tends to be a bit expensive. So if you buy that particular plugin, essentially I think it is $130, which is on the high end. I mean, it's not unreasonable, but be aware that sort of that plugin comes in at a reasonably a somewhat higher price than you would normally expect. And with that being said, that's everything I wanted to say today. If you like the content that I'm producing, please consider subscribing. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below. And other than that, see you at the next video.